So my name is TJ Sargent. I am the Greek Life Coordinator. I work in the Center for Leadership and Involvement, which is a department in the Division of Student Life. And I have been there now for a little over a year, like 14 months, I would guess. And yeah, anything else that you need us to share?
Can you maybe give some of your, like where you did grad school?
Oh yeah,
undergrad?
educational background. So I did my undergraduate work at Lake Forest College, a small liberal arts college north of Chicago. Majored in communication there. And then did my graduate work at Eastern Illinois University, where I got a master's degree in college student affairs.
I'm Chapman. I am the Alcohol Conduct and Basics Coordinator in the Dean of Students Office, which is also in the Division of Student Life. I've been here for just over 13 months. Previously, I worked in Res Life after grad school. I did my undergrad at Eastern Michigan University and my grad work at the University of Denver.
I'm Vinika Porwal. I'm an organizational development specialist in the Multicultural Student Center, which is also a department of student life. And just under the creepy third floor gap in the red gym, there's that huge sort of gap.
Called the second floor.
Called the second floor. There's something floating around there.
The mezzanine.
We'll throw you off every time.
I've been here for just over 3 months, so I'm very, very new to campus. And I did undergrad at Northwestern, which is just north of Chicago, and then grad school at Penn State, and graduated this past May.
I'm Maggie Higgins. I work in the Dean of Students Office as a Student Assistance Coordinator, which is a new position, and it's like being a social worker or case manager. Try to tell people what that means. I did my undergrad at North Central College, which is also a small liberal arts college outside of Chicago in Naperville, Illinois, and I did my grad work at Kansas State. And before coming here, I was working in residence life.
I feel totally like the odd one out. My name is Nikki, Bollig. I work currently in the School of Business as an academic advisor, so not in student life, though I did work in CFLI when I was in grad school. We'll talk about that later. I did my undergrad and my graduate programs here at UW-Madison. I did my undergrad in international studies with a certificate in religious studies, and I did the ELPA program.
Oh, nice.
I'll start. I mean, I just did this. Did I cut you off?
No, please
I
go.
saw your hand motion. So having just applied for jobs, it feels like it was yesterday, and I would say at this point in time, you can look and see, I don't know if you're looking on the Chronicle or studentaffairs.com for jobs that you might be interested in, but the bulk of them won't be posted until February or March. So this might be a good time to see what's available, but the people who have jobs posted now are probably looking to fill them by January or February when you'll still be in class. So you probably don't need to start that in earnest until the spring.
Even for the overachievers.
So the thing is, I mean, you can get it together, right? Like you can get your resume and your cover letter and stuff together, but like you may not have anything to do with it until people are actually intending to hire, which is probably going to be later.
I think one exception to that is housing.
Sure.
Housing jobs have already started posting because the placement changes. Oshkosh Placement Exchange happens in late February, early March. And that's really convenient because it's just up the road, and that's a lot of housing jobs, and the placement exchange happens in March in Baltimore, is that right? Okay. No, I'm looking at you because you're going.
March 2nd.
Yeah, so, and so they'll have a lot of jobs starting to post that will be starting in June or July. August.
They have about 12 jobs posted so far.
Yeah.
I'm not counting.
Yeah, they'll get a few hundred.
Yeah, there'll be like hundreds. Yeah, so I think that's maybe the one exception is housing, but I would echo a lot of what you said. I am like an overachiever, so I'm going to hand out of some websites that I found particularly helpful. Actually, Maggie, can I have one of those back?
Yeah.
Just because I think, I mean, this is certainly not exhaustive, and there's definitely several more, but the Placement Exchange and Oshkosh Placement Exchange are both there. You mentioned studentaffairs.com, and Academic 360 is another one, and Higher Ed Jobs, but there's definitely more websites out there that you can be looking at. I personally found Higher Ed Jobs to be really helpful because you can set up job agents to say like, I want to live in these 3 states, and they will just email you a list of jobs that are posted in those 3 states once a week or every day. Every day is a little overwhelming, but if that's your speed, go for it. They also have a great dual career search feature, which is really helpful if you find yourself in that situation. Yeah, so that's my...
For the go-getters in the group, I've done 2 job searches since finishing. I did my one post-master, like in my master's program, and afterward, and it didn't go well. I kind of lucked somewhat into the job I ended up getting, but I was limited locally. So when I was searching the following summer, I actually did a lot of things differently. And so Spencer has a resource that I utilized. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's a spreadsheet of most schools in the states that I was willing to live in. And so it might not be exhaustive if you're looking at, say, Florida, because I wasn't looking at Florida. But it has like probably 30 states at least, I would say. And it has the actual HR job posting pages for all of those schools. So I'm happy you can share that out to everyone. And so on my second job search, because it was essentially me doing that every day, I was going through school by school looking at what's posted, because I was very specific in looking at conduct positions, and there's not a good centralized place for all the conduct jobs that are out there. So in terms of preparing for your job search, it's a good idea to look at and think about where you want to live or work, and prepare to be able to kind of systematically search for, or be prepared to look for jobs at those institutions or in those regional areas. And so the job agents that Higher Ed Job has is a good resource for that, because it catalogs all those things. But schools may not post to Higher Ed Jobs. They may post to, they usually have probably about 10 places that they have to post to try and get a diverse pool of applicants. So there'll be maybe some variances in that, but it's a good idea to get your resume prepared and have that ready, and then kind of have some a framework for your cover letter, but you'll want to customize that to every job that you apply for.
So maybe a kind of a unique situation. I started applying for jobs when I started graduate school, knowing that the ELPA program was somewhat flexible and that it wasn't a cohorted program, and that you can kind of complete, the courses as you need to. And I applied for a year and a half, lots of rejections, and I think now, I've worked, I guess I didn't say this, I've worked in my current position for 4 years, and so I've been on half a dozen, if not more, search committees. So being on this side of it, I would say some of the things that are most important when you are a current student is absolutely that a lot of the positions that are up now, how long it takes for positions to get posted. They wanted that person 3 months ago, so they're definitely probably not willing to wait until May at this point. But you never know, and depending upon the rest of the pool and depending upon kind of your own situation and what you could work out, it's certainly worth applying, because even if you're interviewing for things just to get the practice, so be it. Then when the things come around that you really need or are going for, you're much more prepared. But if you're not getting interviews now, I wouldn't be surprised, because that's definitely something that you look at being part of a search committee as well. They're not done with their program until May. There's no way that they'd be waiting around when we want this person in by January. So, but in my situation, I actually was offered my position in September of my last semester in graduate school. And so instead of being a full-time student, I became a full-time employee and just went down to 1 class. And then I spread out my final 2 classes over another year. So it was maybe a little bit more rare or unique. I would say it's much more common that you have to have the master's credential just to be eligible for the position. But I've seen it being on searches where folks who aren't done yet or are in the process of achieving finishing their graduate program have been considered. So I think it's important to be paying attention to that now. I'm beyond impressed with the amount of work that you put into searching. I was really limited to being here. My husband was in graduate school too, so I only looked at Wisconsin and METC, Madison College, and Edgewood. And I would say I really looked more heavily at UW because I wanted to be here. I'm a little bit of a lifer, if you can't tell. And it just took a lot of time and a lot of networking. That's one of the best pieces of advice I could give you is to spend your time now when you're not necessarily in active, job search mode. Just reaching out to folks, doing informational interviews. Hey, I'm really interested in working in the field that you're in right now. Do you think we could sit down? And I'd just love to hear about your story, your path, how you got there, instead of making it more of like I need to get a job in your field, what's available. If you start building those relationships now, it's only going to benefit you when those come around. That's like 95% how I got my current position. It was networking and knowing people, and people could vouch for the fact that, I wasn't done with school, but I could do it, and I was a strong candidate. So, and being on the search committee side, that's also really important when there are lots and lots of applicants. Having someone who knows something about you is better than just what's on your materials. But the other piece of that with your materials is, regardless of what the position is, if you know your dream is to work in, conduct, but you're applying for housing positions, you have to convince the reader that this is the one job that you've always wanted. Make it really clear that this is what you want to do. And I think the reason that I had, so many rejections for a long time was just because I knew I wanted to work in advising, and I couldn't even convince myself that I wanted to do some of the other positions. So that's really, really important in your materials.